All right, welcome back to Unit 4, Day 2. So reminders before we get started, please have your history notebook out and taking notes as you move through the video. And make sure that you complete the vocabulary for this video, even writing down the definitions or highlighting them in your notebook as you move through. So let's go ahead and get started. So our terms for today are going to be the First and Second Russian Revolution, Wilson's 14 points, the Treaty of Versailles, Kerensky, the Weimar Republic, and the League of Nations. Concepts, we're going to talk about the effects of World War I and the Treaty of Versailles. We're going to talk about the Russian Revolution and its effects. So, near the end of the last unit, we talked about the 1905 Russian Revolution, that Russia wasn't really in a good state. We had people revolting for workers' rights. The government was like giving reforms and yanking them away. And they kind of joined the war to kind of help prop themselves up and due to alliances. By 1916, Russia's in trouble. Militarily, they're ready to collapse at any time. Troops are ready to mutiny and are mutinying. They're running away from the battlefield because they're underfed. Peasants are starving. Workers are upset. It's a mess. There's strikes. There's mutinies. There's starts to be revolts. And by February 1917, which is called the February Revolution or the Little Revolution, this is when the Russian troops on the front line begin to mutiny, begin to refuse imperial orders. Commanders as well as foot soldiers begin to just kind of rebel against the government. This forces the Tsar to abdicate, meaning to give up his power, and declare Russia a republic. This leads to the kind of first socialist republic in Russia. This is the Kerensky government. Now, it was socialist, but Kerensky was more of a moderate, and he didn't have a lot of power, and there's too many competing interests for Russia. And due to this, and also this revolution, he's under immense pressure from allies to continue the war, so he doesn't end the war. Both of these revolutions will be based off the slogan "Peace, Land, and Bread." So it's one of those where continuing the war won't solve that. And so what happens is the communists under Lenin are going to organize a private army known as the Red Guard, and by October of the same year, we're going to have the Second Russian Revolution, or the October Revolution, known as the Communist Revolution. This happens in 1917, October of 1917, and the Red Guard and the communist supporters seize control of the state from the socialists. Lenin will take power, create a communist government. Now Russia is going to sign the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk with Germany, basically ending the war with Germany. So at this point, by the Brest-Litovsk Treaty, Russia's out of the war. What this does is it does two things. It gives a lot of land to Germany, and Russia's now out of the conflict. So Russia can focus on purging its government of any people who doesn't support the communists. And this lets the German army move its troops from the east to the west. Again, the slogan, "Peace, Land, and Bread." Peace from the war, land for the people, and bread to feed the masses. This is the amount of land that was given to Germany with the Brest-Litovsk Treaty. And it takes a lot of the farmland as long as Ukraine and Crimea. Some Russian propaganda. Remember, World War I is really the beginning of the propaganda machine, and World War II will just make that even worse. Now, let's talk about kind of nearing the end of the war. Let's talk about the home fronts. This is what's happening at home. All right, so governments are going to take direct control of many industries. So if your factory was making cars, you're now making jeeps and tanks, right? If you were making washing machines, you're now making machine guns. Right? Governments are also going to make use of sophisticated propaganda to keep people on their side, to try to prevent revolutions. Also, during this time, women are going to gain a bunch of rights. They're going to start participating in the labor force. They're going to work in factories. They're going to work at home, victory gardens, right? Because the men are at war, right? So the women need to work in the factories. This is going to push. Also, after the war, many women are going to be pushed out of the work, but this participation in the war effort will help them gain voting rights in Britain, Germany, and the United States. Now, after Russia surrenders, and they're hoping before the United States arrives, Germany will launch a major April offensive in 1918, which is an attempt to kind of run the Allies over and kind of stop the United States before they could even get here. Well, the U.S. troops arrive quicker than expected, then halt the German advance, leading in the Second Battle of the Marne. The Germans really can't go any further, and it's back to stalemating. The collapse of the Austro-Hungarians, the Bulgarians, and the Ottoman Empire really leaves Germany just kind of on its own, trying to fight a multi-front war, and they just can't win. This leads to Germany signing an armistice on Armistice Day, which is November 11th, 1918. In the 11th hour of the 11th month of the 11th day, right? The guns in Europe fell silent. Also, this leads to a revolution in Germany. Soviet and socialist revolutions in Germany lead to the collapse of the German Empire, and the Kaiser, or the Emperor, will be replaced by a republic, the Weimar Republic. Many Germans come to blame this new civilian government that replaced the Kaiser for the loss of World War One. This is going to lead to the rise of nationalism. This is going to lead to eventually lead to the Nazi Party, the stabbed in the back theory, and then eventually Hitler coming to power. Now, what's the cost of this war? Well, immense destruction in Europe, high death tolls. The deaths alone, 10 million. That's not including injured or casualties. Also, the Allies, France, England, and Russia owe billions of dollars to the United States. And so they can't pay it back themselves, so they try to get Germany to pay them with reparations. Compound that with the Spanish flu epidemic that kills another 50 million more, and this is just a mess for everybody involved. So let's talk about the Paris peace treaties. Now, we know that the United States has Woodrow Wilson as the president, and he's going to come with the 14 points. Now, these 14 points are kind of naive. He kind of believes in smaller militaries, self-determination, which would allow colonies to say that they themselves become independent. Britain's not going to like that. So no self-determination. They're not going to limit the size of militaries. A few things that come about freedom of the seas that gets implemented in the League of Nations. So 2 parts. Now, Paris Peace Conference comes about. This is the Treaty of Versailles. Germany is deliberately humiliated. They're told to take 100% responsibility for the start of the war, which we know that they didn't start the war. Serbia started the war, and Austria-Hungary kind of propagated it. But Germany is deliberately humiliated. They're forced to pay billions in reparations, right? Germany also doesn't believe they even lost, so that's just an issue. Austria-Hungary is chopped up into Czechoslovakia, Austria, Hungary, several other smaller nations. The Ottoman Empire is chopped up into Iraq, Turkey, just chopped up in all these little mandates, right? Russia's not invited to the peace conference because they signed their own peace treaty with Germany, so they weren't involved at the end of the war. So the Allies are like, no, you can't show up. You're not allowed at the cool kids table, right? And also they don't like communism, right? Colonies, India, African colonies are ignored for these. China, who declared war but really didn't help, was ignored. Envoys were often ignored or not even consulted. A lot of colonies will send envoys to try to talk themselves to get independence. India will be ignored. Vietnam, a gentleman by the name of Ho Chi Minh, which is going to become important later, will show up to the talk and be ignored completely, right? Which is going to lead to the Vietnam War. Um, and then they make the League of Nations, and the League of Nations' goal was to avoid war. But the problem is they can't enforce that, so they can't stop anybody being stupid. So they don't have any power, and they can't punish aggressors. So nothing happens. They're just kind of there to argue about it, right? As you said, Germany loses a lot of its land as well. Um, so they start off with all of these things. They start off with pretty much all the way to the Russian border, and now they're chopped up into a bunch of little bitty countries. All right, y'all, that's all I have for you today. Thank you guys, and I'll see you guys in class.